Welcome to Events Heist, the podcast game show about post-COVID events and the event professionals that run them. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Anne and Sheldon. Anne is the head of community engagement at Twine and the founder of Spark Event Management. She shares an impressive story of organizing a virtual event for 12,000 attendees and a traumatic but hilarious experience with attendee badges. Sheldon is a marketing professional with events and producer backgrounds and the CEO of Lachambre Consulting and Events. He shares his experience with the Super Bowl and dealing with bomb threats at a music festival. So, Anne, you've rolled a 4.
I did?
You did. So you can see the dice rolls on the board. If you're in, you should be in gallery view if you want to see the board at the same time. All right, so Anne, starting with you, how many events have you been involved in your professional career?
So I've been in the industry for 15 years, probably averaging 15 to 20 events a year. So 300 maybe?
I'm not good at maths. Don't look at me.
I think, somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 350 over the course of my career.
Okay, Sheldon, you've rolled a 1. All right, so same question. How many events do you think you've been involved in your professional career?
Pretty similar to Anne. I think my professional career started in about 2000, so I've been doing this for 21 years. So I think I'd probably be 350 plus events, big, small, and huge. So yeah, probably similar to Anne, actually.
Okay, and you've rolled a 6.
Oh,
Jeez.
yeah. I'm good at this game.
Okay. So tell me about the largest event that you've been involved in.
The largest?
Mm-hmm.
So a week after the pandemic happened, we were planning Global Meetings Industry Day, so our sort of international industries day of advocacy and awareness, and all of the live events across the world got canceled. So me and a team of 50 event volunteers from around the world set out to put together a Guinness World Record breaking attempt, which we needed 15,000 people to dial in online. We only got to 12,500, which was pretty impressive after like 3 weeks.
That is impressive.
But that would be the largest for sure. We didn't break the record, but I think largest event of number of attendees would be that one. So GMID goes virtual.
Okay, Sheldon, you rolled a 5.
That's better.
All right, Sheldon, tell me about the first event you remember organizing.
First one that probably pops to mind is up here in Canada, we do a big hockey championship. It's called the Memorial Cup. It's the oldest championship in Canada that they award to the junior hockey teams. So that was probably the first one. I was living in Regina, Saskatchewan at the time, and I was on the organizing committee as well as the marketing manager of the junior Regina Pats, who were hosting the Memorial Cup. So it was about a 10-day event, accumulating in the championship at the end of it. So parties going on, beer gardens happening, lots going outside the stadium, Hall of Fame things coming in, and then of course the games. So that was probably the first one that I can recall that was a big one.
I can ask you the same question. The first event you remember organizing?
When I was in university, my 3rd year, I volunteered to chair the University of Alberta School of Business's year-end beer gardens. And so at the end of the year, it's just like a 2-day party for students that happens in like the quad area. And it was in April, and the day before it was supposed to happen, it snowed like 5 inches in April. So that event was memorable because we had to shovel out a quad to have this beer garden. So we could only have the beer gardens one day instead of 2, but it was probably the first real event where I felt the event stress and all of the.
Probably goes back all the way to, when I was a kid organizing just, parties at my house kind of thing, and having a really great time. And then it moved on to university, and that's when I got involved in a lot of events around the hockey team and things. So
what is your favorite post-event junk food, drink / de-stressing activity?
Back when we were doing live events, I would always go get a pedicure after, because your feet would just be mangled from all high heels. And then it's like a very comfort food. So spaghetti, garlic toast, and Caesar salad.
Nice.
It's like my post-event dinner after my pedicure.
What about you, Sheldon? What's your favorite de-stressing drink, activity, or food?
Well, the first thing that definitely comes to mind is just sleep.
Yeah.
I usually will stay in the hotel wherever we're hosting the event or whatnot, for an extra day after, and literally just sleep in.
So what do you love and or hate about events?
I love creating moments and connections at events that I know will spark and spur on further action or change. I think that when attendees connect at events and they exchange ideas and they have dialogue, they're most likely going to be impacted in some way and take that back to their day-to-day lives.
Describe for me the moment you knew COVID was going to turn the industry upside down.
I'll defer that question to Anne. I'm going to defer that question.
I like it. Yes, you absolutely can defer that.
I don't like this rule.
Don't worry, you can use it to your own advantage.
Okay, I'll tell you. So the week that COVID was sort of happening, the night that Tom Hanks got it and the NBA was shut down, I was in the middle of planning an event that was supposed to start that Friday. So we were in a really weird spot. If our event was a week earlier, we would have just had it. And if it was a week later, it was obvious that you should cancel it. But we were right in that. So the moment I knew it was going to change the industry was I woke up at 3 a.m. My client was calling saying, we have to cancel this. Our US speakers can't get here, getting ready to cancel. And that day, I think, 10 years worth of work seemed like it disappeared in 8 hours, where we canceled, I think, 6 conferences that day, just out of panic and clients not knowing what to do.
So what do you love and or hate about events?
I love the connection points that are made between businesses and colleagues and sponsors. In terms of the stuff I don't really love is, as you guys probably all know, and I'm sure Anna can attest to this too, events are incredibly stressful. I usually go and get sick for a week after the event because your body is kind of holding on. So I've learned over the last few years to kind of manage that better and, take the time that I need to kind of de-stress and, have a healthy work-life balance.
Okay, and you rolled a 1 and now you are down.
Oh, yes.
What do you miss about in-person events and what do you not miss?
So far, what I realized being on site actually this week is that I've just missed the energy and how much more quickly things can get done when you're in a room together, right? Especially if you need to problem solve. We run into on-site issues here. I don't miss, similar to my earlier answer, the manual labor. So today there's 500 delegate bags that have to get stuffed, right? So tons of moving boxes and that kind of stuff that ends up being pretty exhausting.
Tell me a bit about the industries that you've done events for and what your favorite is.
First one that comes to mind obviously is sports. I do a lot of sports events, music events, conferences, and brand activations. Those are kind of the 4 main kind of pillars of my company. I think the ones that I enjoy the most are the music events. Just because there's a large entertainment component to it. They're not as, depending on if it's a festival or just a concert event, for example, they're not as stressful to plan than say a conference, in my opinion.
Describe to me your fantasy event.
Oh, I'm going to defer this.
Okay. Sheldon, same question.
The first one that comes to mind and would be the Super Bowl, because it's the preeminent event of all events. A few years ago, we were able to work within the Super Bowl down in Houston, Texas, putting on it's kind of a music festival within the Super Bowl, and just the machine and the money and, the sponsors and the pomp and circumstance of all of it. It's the event. So that one kind of comes to mind.
So how did you find the switch to virtual during this pandemic?
Well, it was very sudden, and I've had lots of conversations with people about why it took a global pandemic to move our industry online, why we were so resistant and hesitant to it. Since during the pandemic, I've also switched career paths a little bit over into event tech. So I'm learning a lot about
Yes.
how we
You
can
were
use.
flagged as having defected to the dark side. That's not my term. That's literally the I can't remember the name of it. One of our previous guests nominated you as someone who
Anthony.
had switched to the dark side, which I found interesting.
I think that it was actually a really welcome change for event professionals and event technology to figure out ways to work together. And that's improved even over the last 6 months, the last year, right? And companies like mine and I look at Hopin and Swapcard and Julius and all of that, where we're starting to really integrate the two sides, that it's not so divided anymore.
Have you read or watched anything recently that you'd like to share with other event professionals?
The big thing right now, and I think Anne can relate to this because I joined her channel, the Twine channel. We were talking about this, but I run a big event center here in Calgary where we do a lot of concerts, and we've essentially been shut down for 2 years. And then in our province, we fully kind of removed all the restrictions, and everyone's like, okay, you're back to normal, no restrictions. And the challenging thing right now is kind of navigating through COVID and vaccinations, and having our guests ask us if there's going to be, a vaccination spot to sit and an unvaccination spot to sit, or will we be requiring to see their vaccination passport, which potentially might come out from our government. So we still don't have the answer right now. We're just going to open up and hope for the best, similar to what the Calgary Stampede kind of just did. But that's the biggest thing that I saw. I've been kind of keeping my thumb on the pulse in terms of what's going on overseas and watching some of their concerts and stuff and what they're doing.
What was your transition like from the light side to the dark side? And can you explain these terms?
Prior to COVID and even right after COVID, event technology companies don't have a great reputation of how they sell and service the events industry, right? So they're typically very aggressive. They put their product behind paywalls. You never can get a price on what things cost. They email you all the time, force you to sit through demos. So when I was an independent planner, my opinion of event tech companies and how they sold, I had a pretty harsh one. And so what we created when COVID happened, we created this thing called Event Profs Break Shit, me and a couple of friends, Miguel, who I think has been on here as well.
Yes.
Where we pooled our buying power as event planners and went and tested software together. So Twine was the first platform that was at the time brave enough to say, okay, we're going to open up our beta platform at the time. You guys come test it, break it, give us some feedback, and we'll improve our product. So Twine was the first company that allowed us to do that. Lawrence thought the idea was really an innovative one. So that sort of bridged the gap for me, that like we could work together as planners and as event technologists to make the product better and serve the market better.
Tell me about the most stressful event you've ever organized.
It had to do with that Super Bowl event we were a part of. We were asked by this organizer out of Toronto to go down there and put together this kind of music festival. And literally it was like a mini version of the Friar Festival. Everything that could have happened that went wrong. From, there was, bad cops we were dealing with, and there was a bomb threat. So we had to clear out the entire space. Some of our staff had guns pulled on them from the venue people. It was just, there was multiple ticketing platforms they were using. We had a ticketing platform that was supposed to be the one that everyone was using, and they had one, and there was multiple tickets out there and different sponsorships. It was just a mess. So I kind of vowed never to go back to that city, because it just brings back like such bad memories. But just the lack of, you could clearly see the organizer had a lack of experience of planning something big like that.
All right. So do you have any good event war stories you want to share?
So my very first job in an event planning agency, I was the first employee, and it was 3 men who had come together. They owned a software company, a registration software, and a marketing company, and they merged into, and they were like, well, we can all use this for event planning. So they had very little event planning experience, and they brought me on to help them with this women's leadership forum. And it just, similar to what Sheldon just said, it was like very clear that they didn't really know what they were doing. They were lovely men, and still great parts of my career today, and I still keep in touch with all of them. But this is a really like nitty-gritty good lesson learned for a new event planner. We had badges that we had printed, so the front of your badge had your name on it and the back of your badge had your sessions on it, right? So pretty simple in theory. But we had printed the backs without the person's name on top of it, and every record had shifted by 1. So basically, like, I had put your sessions in the back of Sheldon's badge, and Sheldon's
no.
back of my badge.
Oh. Oh no.
And discovering this like 4 hours before registration was supposed to open.
Okay, same question, Sheldon. Got any good war stories?
The biggest horror stories I usually have with a lot of our events has to do with like flights and airfare and making sure your speakers are getting here on time, and you got to deal with weather up here in Canada.
Yeah.
That's a challenge. Like the gathering event that we would host every year up in Banff was in February in the middle of the winter. So we had guests coming from all over the States and the world, basically. So that was probably the biggest, one. We had our keynote speaker, like literally was held up at the airport, and we had to like essentially kind of delay part of his starting time. And, you have a room full of people waiting for him to hear, and you're paying him a lot of money. And, so that would probably be, I literally have nightmares about that. Kind of keeps me up at night thinking like, oh my God, your keynote speaker didn't show up or whatnot, right?
Okay, so if you could pick an event pet, any kind of animal that you bring along to an event to help you out, what would it be?
I'm not like a huge animal person, so the idea of bringing an animal with me is not very appealing. Maybe some sort of like magic badge stuffing unicorn.
Okay, yeah. Magic badge stuffing unicorn. I like it. That's good. Sheldon, you rolled a 15. Oh no. Oh no.
I was counting along. I think I got an extra one.
What's your emergency kit during events?
I will defer that question to Anne so I can catch up with her on the board.
Good move.
I have this really slick mobile printer that's pretty small that fits pretty much.
Mobile printer, that's cool.
Blisters, not blisters, band-aids for my blisters. We have a first aid kit that we bring for attendees, like we're responsible. My personal emergency kit, and flat shoes is in there for when you can't wear heels anymore. What else is in there? Just like snacks, so like pudding snacks I have in there. And so when I went to prep it for this event, it's been like a year and a half, right? And things have like gone bad.
What do you think the future of events looks like in your region?
Anne kind of alluded to it earlier, and she works within the dark side of this world now. But I think this hybrid model of live versus, on demand or virtual is kind of the future within the next 2 to 3 years. I think as people start to get used to coming out of the pandemic, and then maybe like with you guys going back into it. So now you're back into virtual. So this hybrid model, I think, is here to stay for the next little while anyways. Preferably, I would always prefer to attend events. You miss out on that energy. And I was talking to some of our guests last night at the music festival, and they were big supporters of ours, and they're just like, you know what, there's nothing beats being on this island and watching music live with your family and friends. And
do you think hybrid events is the new normal?
Yeah, I attended a seminar today that Miguel and Anthony from Hopin put on through Event MB, and Miguel asked people to say in the chat what kind of events they're planning, and hybrid 100% was the most prominent one. But I think that we're learning a lot about what hybrid is, and what we're starting to discover is potentially that those things don't have to happen at the same time. You know, just streaming what's happening in a ballroom to a virtual audience and calling it hybrid isn't necessarily sustainable, I think. One of my speaker friends sent me a video of literally a room of people in Vegas watching a Zoom on the screen.
How do you think Zoom fatigue or just generally screen fatigue is affecting virtual events, hybrid events, etc.?
It's a big thing. Like when we went into this pandemic, rarely would we have Zoom calls to plan or organize. At the time, I was working with an organization out of Toronto, which is halfway across Canada from where we are, and our Zoom went from maybe 5% to like 100% of our meetings were on Zoom and events and stuff, and it's quite a fatigue. Like we had to plan around that fatigue where we didn't, Anne can relate to this too, based on what I think her schedule is like too. But we were on the Zoom call all day long for 8 hours, and it was just like, oh, enough's enough kind of thing. And
Great. Okay. And you wrote a 10, and I think that will put you at the mint.
Yes, I win.
No, go down the manhole.
No, I'm pretty sure a 10 gets you to the mint. Yeah, that's it.
No.
Congratulations, you are the winner. If you could give one piece of advice to event planners, event professionals out there right now, what would it be?
I think that the advice is actually, regardless of whether COVID's happening or not, it holds true. I mean, COVID really emphasized it, but the idea of investing in your community, and I use that term instead of, I say, networking. I think, networking is an interesting term. It obviously comes up a lot at Twine, but what it's about is investing in these relationships, right? And not just investing in them when you need things, but giving back to your community, investing in people, helping them in terms of what they need at certain points in your career when you're like 25 and older, like I am, taking time to go back and mentor people, right? And help them through some of the challenges that you had.
Thanks so much for being guests of Event Heist. It's been great having you on.